Joining us now is Democratic Congressman from Colorado, Jason Crow. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee who asked questions to Secretary Hegseth just about an hour ago. Congressman, thanks for coming on with us. You pushed the secretary on his background and experiences in the military. What was behind your line of questioning there, and were you satisfied with the responses he gave?
Well, I pushed him on the issue of politics at Fort Bragg. I started my military career at Fort Bragg. I was a paratrooper. I was an infantry platoon leader for the 82nd Airborne Division. And I talked to Secretary Hegseth about our mutual experience being platoon leaders, leading platoons of infantry soldiers in combat. He actually agreed that when he was an infantry platoon leader that he wouldn't ask about politics. It would be inappropriate to bring up politics. But then he refused to answer whether or not what happened at Fort Bragg this week was inappropriate and inconsistent with everything that we know about leadership, that it's corrosive to team culture. It's corrosive to the very idea that our military serves the nation and the Constitution and not a political party. So when somebody comes before Congress and refuses to answer a question, it's either because they don't know the answer, which is bad enough, or even worse, they don't want to give the answer, which is so often the case with Pete Hegseth, because he knows that his answers are wrong, he knows that his answers are unpopular, and he knows that he can't justify them.
Yeah, we have seen him stonewall members of various committees. I even think that he equivocated on a point when he was asked by Republican senators yesterday about policy in Ukraine, for example. So many topics that were being hit over the course of the last 2 days. But at one point in the hearing today, when he was pressed by your colleague, Congressman Adam Smith, on whether the Defense Department is going to take the Panama Canal or Greenland by force, remember, that was something we were talking about just a few weeks ago. Secretary Hegseth said it's their job to have plans for any contingency. You then had Congressman Mike Turner, a Republican, come back and seek some clarification. Let's listen to that moment and then talk about it on the other side.
You are not confirming in your testimony today that at the Pentagon there are plans for invading or taking by force Greenland, correct? That is not your testimony today.
All my testimony is that the Pentagon has plans for any number of contingencies.
It is not your testimony today that there are plans at the Pentagon for taking by force or invading Greenland, correct? Because I'm sure as hell hope that it is not your testimony.
We look forward to working with Greenland to ensure that it is secured from any potential threats.
So again, another example that it's not just to Democrats that he's stonewalling, but how do you interpret that remark, Congressman?
Well, this goes back to my earlier point about not answering questions. Every American, regardless of your political affiliation, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, should be gravely concerned about our Secretary of Defense, who's responsible for over 2 million of our men and women in uniform, securing our country, protecting against our deep threats that we face every day. And he's not willing to answer basic questions by Republicans and Democrats who are charged with the constitutional obligation to do oversight under the Armed Services Committee. This is a major problem. It's completely unprecedented that we have a Secretary of Defense that will stonewall and not answer basic questions. And again, it's because they don't want people to know the answers. That's very scary stuff.
And so maybe that makes my next question moot, but is there anything that he hasn't been asked about yet today that you need information about from him?
Well, we need to drill even further into the issue of whether or not he would respect lawful orders of the Supreme Court or findings of the Supreme Court. Having a Secretary of Defense say that he wouldn't be willing to actually abide by court rulings of the Supreme Court or other courts is really astonishing stuff. Absolutely astonishing. And that should worry, again, every American.
I think is put into sharper focus when you consider what's going on the ground in states like California. I also want to get you on some news that President Trump made just in the last hour. He said that Israel could, quote, very well have military action against Iran. He was asked if that was imminent. But how concerned are you about a situation like that and what it could set off within the region?
Let's be clear that a conflict between Israel and Iran could rapidly spin out of control and create an enormous crisis in the Middle East and actually jeopardize the lives of tens of thousands of Americans, both military and civilian, that live and work in that area. And this is a consequence of a complete lack of a policy by this administration. This administration rolled back the JCPOA, the deal that actually had us doing inspections, had international inspectors going in and checking that prevented Iran from having a nuclear program. They wiped that deal off the board. They have pursued what they said is a maximum pressure policy, which has completely failed. And here we are now on the brink of a conflict and chaos. That is because this administration, Donald Trump, walked back from the deal that would have prevented us from being in this place, and now here we are.
And is now trying to establish one of his own, which experts say has shades of that initial JCPOA. Congressman Jason Crow, thank you for coming on.